You guys ready? Nice. You were born ready? So we're here to talk about what? So say it nice and loud so people can hear you.
Punching cables.
Punching cables?
Punching something.
Yep. So this thing is called a punch down tool, right? You guys are familiar with this? You've used this before? Did you guys learn the hard way about the sharp end and the not sharp end?
Yes. They did, yeah. I did.
Everybody sort of learns that the hard way. I shouldn't say it. You don't make that mistake probably more than once, right? Because you chop the wrong end of the cable off. But did you learn how to take this out and switch it around? If you didn't want to cut it down, in our class we always want to cut it off. And then this thing can store back here. Some people will learn this and they're like, "Oh, Mr. Lake, there's no tool," and then it really should be stored in the handle. So do you know why it gets stored in the handle?
So that it just, I don't know.
Hey, the sharper this is, the happier you are. Have you noticed that? Did you get a dull one? Yeah, it's kind of annoying when you get a dull one. You want the punch down, the cutter part of it to be real sharp, and your life will be happier. So I got a couple examples of punch down blocks here. You guys have seen these before. This should not be completely new to you, but what do you notice about them?
Different colors.
I think they go to full screen. Different colors.
It looks like the colors of the wires.
So the colors of the wires are represented on there. There's like a map, right? So look at this one compared to this one compared to this one. It's upside down. Which one do you like best?
Top one just makes it.
You like this one up here?
Yeah.
So I don't care. I've just learned that I just need to look at them for 30 seconds before I start to figure out what they're doing, right? And it doesn't really matter. They're all doing the same thing, aren't they? They're just.
We don't know how they work, so.
But what I'm trying to tell you is you're going to run into, if you do this, right, or even if you don't do cabling, you're going to wind up in a network that has cabling, it has punch down blocks, and once in a while you might have to go check them to find out what's going on. And since I've worked here, I've probably had to fix, I don't know, half a dozen wires. That's not much, but it's also a small network, right? So if you had 10,000 computers you're supporting at a big place, you're probably going to run into some cabling problems once in a while, because they will kind of, every once in a while a wire will just kind of work itself out of there. If somebody opens a rack or pulls a server out and bumps it or whatever, the wires can come out. And then on this side, when you have the drops, this is where the problem's more likely to happen. Right? These are located in the server room. The punch down blocks are located in the server room, usually locked up and nobody goes in it. So nothing usually happens to the punch down blocks. Although, like I said, I have had some wires pop out of mine over the years, mostly because people are in there moving equipment around. So why does the punch down block side or the jack side have more trouble? You think what? Yeah, these are out in the work area, the exposed area of the network, so where people work. And what do people do sometimes with they bump them, right, with their feet, or I've seen them with a patch cable gets wrapped around people's chairs and you pull out and just, right, and they get mangled or destroyed or whatever. They're just more susceptible to problems. So if you had one of these that failed and you had to call a contractor out to fix it, depending on the size of your company, you might just do that, and you might have cabling people on staff that do it. But if you call a technician out to fix that, they're going to charge you a couple $100. I mean, they have to, right? They got to put a guy in a truck, drive out. It's going to cost money to get this stuff fixed. What's that? Go louder again.
You're paying them to drive to your business.
Yeah. So it cost me like $75 to have a guy come out and tell me my dishwasher is broken. Then he had to order a part, and they had to come back and put the thing in for $300 more, right? So that's the only time I've ever fixed my dishwasher, because you can buy dishwashers for like $500, right? So, like, if your dishwasher needs repair, just go buy a new one, is what I learned after that little incident. 'Cause every time it comes out, $75 for a trip charge, and every part they order costs $300. That's what I've learned about that. So, in business, like, can you fix that yourself? It's real easy, right? Once you understand the order of it. Yeah. So, but some things are more complicated. They take a little more time, or specialized tools. If you damage a fiber optic cable, you're going to have some special tools and some special knowledge. This is very simple. All right. So the amount of knowledge you have is very low. So what do you notice about this? Which this, by the way, is a 2-port modular surface mount block, is what this is. So, and it's got an integrated jack in it. See how it's built right into it? These are the cheapest ones known to mankind. All right, so what do you know about the cheapest stuff known to mankind? Might not be the best quality, right? And also, what happens if this one doesn't work? It probably will work, but you can't just replace that side, right? So there are things called keystone jacks. You can buy these little ports that are empty, and you just put a keystone jack in it. These little plastic containers are about 50 cents a piece, maybe 75 cents a piece. And the modular jacks are about $4 a piece. So this is what I used to teach it until I discovered these. So we used to spend about $10 on one of these drops right here. And these whole things are like $2. So do you see why I use them at school? Because you guys will wreck and mangle them, and they're not designed to use over and over and over. Even the good ones, you're really only supposed to punch it down one time, and then if you have to replace it or fix it, you're supposed to get a brand new one. Because it's just when you punch the wire down there, it's just relying on that little piece of metal to kind of hold on to it, and once you punch it down, it's going to loosen it up a little bit. So you really shouldn't be using these over and over. So, and I do use them over, right? Like you can use them over a couple, 2 or 3 times in the lab. That's fine. But if you get one that's used and beat up, then I would not use it. And the only way you can tell is by looking at it. So when you get it, you got to look at. You're looking to see if the plastic is kind of splayed open. It'll kind of get pushed open like that, and you can see it. This one's fine. There's nothing wrong with this one. I'll show you an example of what I'm talking about, and it's very hard to see on this sometimes. You see how this one's kind of pushed open? Now that one, where is it? That wouldn't one too bad. Let me find one that looks worse. Yeah, this one here's kind of bad. It's kind of hard to tell from the top, but if you look at it from this angle here, that wire there, this one here is kind of pushed out. I don't know if you can even see it on the camera. These all look fine to me. This one here, this one on the end is kind of pushed out. It's a little bit open. You can see this one's doing the same thing. I don't know if you guys can see it or not on the camera. This one down here is real bad. That's a good example right there. See that one right there? So you would avoid that, right? Now, because that one is, remember, this is school and we're cheap and we reuse stuff. Like if I was at a company, I would not use this whole block. I'd just throw the whole thing away. Because I can't save much money by using that. A brand new top of the line 24-port punch down block costs about $80 for the best one you can get. So $80 to the school is a lot of money, right? Times 10 of them, it's $800. So if I bought new blocks every time, we'd go through $4,000 in punch down blocks a year. And there's really no reason, right, at the school. And plus, I like you guys to encounter problems. Right? So if you use it and it doesn't work, then it gives us a chance to say, well, the reason why it doesn't work is the punch down block is damaged, and if it was damaged that way before, you shouldn't have used it, and if you damaged it, you shouldn't have done that, right? So it doesn't mean every port is broken, it just means that particular one. Now, how do you identify what port that is? It does say on it, yep. You see the number 17 right there? So that 17 corresponds with that port right there. So don't use that port, right? If you get this block, what some people will do is they'll take a little cable off, and they'll cut a little cable off, and they'll put a little label on it that just says bad. They can mark it. It's an easy way to mark it, right? Grab some patch cable that's broken, just stick it in there, and just write bad on it. Or you can use this little thing up here, you can just label it. I don't know if I have any of those labeled. I don't know if any of them are labeled like that, but that's an easy way to do it. So does that make sense to you? When you get the punch down block, you gotta look it over and just make sure the drops you choose to install are good. And you just have to take a little visual inspective. All three of these have enough good ports on them. So how many drops are we going to install today per person? So 2 means one of these, right? Because there's 2 drops here. So I want you to install the entire run end to end. Now, we already said you guys don't want to make patch cables again. That's okay with me. If you want to make patch cables, that's okay with me too. Either way is good. And you guys feel like you're pretty comfortable and you know how to make patch cables if you have to. You know it's called Cat 5e and the ends are RJ45s and you have to crimp them and you know like the maximum length of what a patch cable should be. It's 5 meters. 5 meters. Nobody in the room will make a 5-meter patch cable because that's a big patch cable, right? That's huge. Usually you want like a 5-footer, right? 5-6 footer for your workstation area. And then on the punch down block, the punch down block has to connect to what device? Not the server. There's people in the room that know because I heard you guys say it yesterday. So once you get all this structured cabling put in, it's just wire, right? It's not doing anything for you yet, and you're going to plug your computer into this, right? And then out the back side of this is going to be a cable that runs into the punch down block, and that's it, unless you plug this punch down block into something. So you guys are used to calling them routers because at home you have a thing called a router that's also a switch and also a wireless access point and also a firewall. So it's like an all-in-one device. They're really quite miraculous, by the way, those little routers you can buy for $50 at your house, because it's a router, a firewall, access point. It does a lot for you, and a switch. So what part of those, what does this get plugged into? So it gets plugged into a switch, right? Now, if we use the home-based stuff, which we probably will use in this class, then you got to use the 4 ports in the back that are labeled, like they call them like Ethernet 0, Ethernet 1, Ethernet 2, something like that, or ETH. So you got to plug it into a switch. The switch provides network connectivity. That's layer 2. That's your access. That's network access. Does that make sense to you? That switch provides a physical connection to your network, whether it's wireless or wired. That's layer 2. So layer 1, the cabling and the punch down blocks and the RJ45s and the jacks, all that's at layer 1. It doesn't really do much for you except provide a conduit to get to your network. And then the network card and the switch, that's your layer 2 connection. Our network layer 2 connection pretty much is always going to be Ethernet. Okay, so that's the difference between the cable, this stuff here, like you guys when you start taking our class, you probably called this Cat 5e cable, you probably called it Ethernet cable, right? Or a internet cord or something like that, right? That's what I hear people calling it. Now, if you're out working in industry, you don't need to freak out if someone calls it a Ethernet cord or a computer cable or, right? They'll call it all sorts of stuff. You know it's a Cat 5e cable, right? And you won't call it Ethernet cable anymore, will you? Around me, because I'll have to correct you. So the analogy I like to use, and I may have already used it with you before, is this campus is surrounded by something. What's the thing that the campus is surrounded by? We have parking lots and we have roads, right? Now, is it a car road or is it just a road? There's a bike road or a walking road or a bus road or a what? It's a road, right? It's just a road. The thing that goes over it can be whatever wants to be on it. It can be a dog on it, right? It can be anything. So this cable is like the road. It's just the thing, right? It's Cat 5e. It's just a cable. Now you can run Ethernet signal over it if you want. You could run a doorbell over it. You could make it. You could use it for speaker wire. You can use it for all sorts of cabling. So it's just a cable, right? So the cable doesn't care that you're running Ethernet over it. We just happen to use it for Ethernet. The layer 2 signal, the way the data gets formatted for transmission on a local area network is Ethernet. Can we use Ethernet all the way to my house? So I live relatively close here. I live about 6 miles away. I just run 6 miles of cable to my house, plug it in. It's way outside the distance limitation of Ethernet, right? Is there a cable that could transmit a signal? Fiber optics could probably do it, right? But fiber optics is not going to be Ethernet anymore either. It's a different standard.
Couldn't you have, what did you call it yesterday? One of the things that you plug it into.
You could do it. You could do 100 repeaters. Yeah, you could do that. That reminds me of, so yeah, you could actually make Ethernet go to my house. I'd have to stop every 100 yards and ask somebody if I could use an extension cord and boost it, and hopefully I had a option every 100 yards. I probably do, because there's a house every 100 yards probably between my house and them, or I could do set some kind of wireless thing up between it. I probably could rig some kind of network connectivity back to KCTC if I tried hard enough, right? You guys ever see that documentary video on the I think they call it like the Havana net or the Cuba net or something like that? You ever seen that? I should show that to you someday. In Cuba, they daisy chained a huge network together because the government doesn't. It's not an open government, right? I mean, it's communist government, dictatorship. They don't want the internet in Cuba. So what people have figured out, they're close enough. I think they can get a Wi-Fi signal, or somehow they're getting a signal from the United States. They can hook up each other just on a peer-to-peer network with cables. They got cables hanging out people's windows and running through the streets, and they built a little network in Cuba, which I think is kind of cool. But it's worse than the networking you guys will build in this class. The video is probably about, it's on YouTube if you want to find it. It's about I don't know if they call it the Cuban net, or they got a cute little name for it, but that's how they share files and stuff in Cuba. Actually, I don't think they're on the internet. I think they just use it to play games and share files and stuff. So we got to talk about how to install this cabling, and I want to pick the punch-down block that you guys don't like. So you like this one, and you can understand it easy?
No, I actually like Tony Lost.
So we get rid of that one. My guess is you don't like, of these, this one's probably the hardest one to figure out.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say that.
Yep, so we'll use that one. They're all the same, right? It's just all this is a sticker down here that they just stick in there. And so there's a couple things that are very important to know about this right off the get-go. It's color-coded. You see that. Everybody recognize that. Now, do you see how, it's really hard to see on our picture here, but do you see how this one says 5A and 5B, and it's a white, basically white with a blue outline on it. That's your white blue, right? That makes sense. There's your solid blue. And then this one, you see how it changes? You have both the green and the orange on that particular area on the punch down block. You'd have to switch it depending if you want to use 568A or 568B. The problem that you get into is you guys will do 568A or B on this one, and you'll switch your standard on this one, and you'll make a crossover cable. You don't want that. That's really bad when you do that. So you have to just be consistent. I really don't care what standard you pick to use in my class, because we're just learning and experiencing it. You're going to see 568B here in North America. That's the standard that we use here. In Europe, they use 568A for some reason. I don't know why. But you see the little, can you guys see the little microscopic A there and the little microscopic B there? Can I make the zoom up or not? How do I do it? I know how to do this. If I zoom it up, it might just make it better but blurrier. Ooh, that didn't help. This is as good as it's going to get because it's not a great camera. That right there says A, and this one down here says B. You just have to trust me. When you get it, you'll be able to see it. It's in about a 1/2 point font, right? So you see on this side, that right there is that's a brown wire, right? It looks kind of orangey, but it's brown. That's the blue. So the browns and blues never change. So pairs 7 and 8, that's the brown pair, and pair 4 and 5, that's the blue pair. They're always in the same place, whether you're doing 568A or 568B. The ones that switch, the ones that get confusing, are 1, 2, 3, and 6. So what people will do, I just try to give you a heads up if I can. What people will do is they'll just order. They'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They'll mix them up because they'll just try to do them in order. You see how it's not in order? It's just to confuse you. I honestly don't know why they split that. I don't know why they split the 3 and 6 up. 1 and 2 go together. 3 and 6, that's the one that splits. Yeah, there's got to be a reason out there somewhere why people split that up, and I'm sure if you researched it, there'd be some kind of answer that may or may not be common sense or not. My guess is I've seen stuff like that in the past, and they do it sometimes for like backward compatibility, and then we just got stuck with it even though we don't need it anymore. So there's probably some reason in 1970 to do that, that we just don't have anymore. It's important to keep the sending and receiving pairs together. Like pairs 1 and 2, that's a send. That goes together, and then pairs 3 and 6 go together. That's your orange white and your green white. Depending on your standard, usually orange white's going to be 1, right? That's what I would recommend you guys doing. If you throw green white on there, I'm automatically going to be thinking you made a crossover cable. Although I've been around long enough and taught the class long enough, I don't assume that anymore. But generally, if I look and see a cable as orange white to start with or green white, that's what I determine whether someone tried to make a crossover cable or not. Ours all should be orange white, orange, green white, right? Blue. Go ahead. So that's a good question from yesterday when we started working on that. So crossover cables, there was someone in the room that knew it. I remember yesterday one of you guys knew why you use crossover cables. Go ahead.
Two similar devices.
It's important. That's the only word that mattered in that whole sentence, right? Different or similar. So they have to be similar devices. PC to PC. Basically, a PC to a router is also considered a PC to a PC, right? So unless you have a switch, you need a crossover cable. So if you brought your computer over, this is what we used to do in the old days before USBs and stuff became popular. Someone bring their computer over for me to work on. I'd make a little network with my computer and their computer. I would copy all their files to my hard drive. This is like 10 years ago before we had all this nice stuff like huge USB hard drives and things like that. You had really no choice. That was the easiest way to back it up. So you'd make a little crossover cable, you'd connect it up. Probably about, I don't know, when I was first started teaching here about 12 or 13 years ago, everybody was playing Xbox, the original Xboxes, and they wanted to play each other, and they needed a crossover cable. Microsoft charged you like $20 for their crossover cable. Kids are like, "Oh, we can make crossover cables here," and I didn't know why everybody was like, "What was like?" Well, it was like wildfire, right? People were wanting crossover cables like they're going out of style. This cable, by the way, costs about 6 cents a foot, 6 or 7 cents a foot, so it's really cheap, right? So people want like 4-foot crossover cables to connect their buddy's Xbox. I used to charge people because the ends are about 6 cents a piece too. So we'd have about 12 cents plus about 18 cents worth of wire, right? About 40 cents into it. So I'd charge them like $1 or whatever to make a crossover cable because so many people wanted them, right? So we got about 40 cents in cost. Microsoft charged $20. I didn't make them back into the supply budget, but I probably sold 100 cables that year. It was crazy. People, and then they make them for their buddies, I don't know, people were probably dealing them back at the home school, like they do with the donut. They probably were. That's probably what happened. I never figured that out. I probably should have marked them up a little more, right? But it's just kind of funny. Nowadays, do you guys need crossover cables to connect up your stuff anymore? So do you know why? So a lot of wireless stuff. Yep. Wired is always better, though. We talked about that yesterday, right? Wire, you're never going to beat a wire for speed or for reliability once it's installed properly. If I have a choice and I'm doing work, I want to be on a wire. I don't like wireless because there's more stuff to troubleshoot. There's more interference with wireless, more funky driver issues and compatibility issues with wired. I've never ever had a compatibility issue with a cable and a network card. You just don't have that very often. But wireless stuff, if you, especially Apple, have you noticed that? Like if you have an Apple, whatever they call their routers, well, as long as everything's Apple, everybody's happy. But if as soon as you throw in like a third party in there, like a Roku or something like that, sometimes those Apple routers will get a little fussy with them. So I just don't like Apple stuff for multiple reasons. Yeah, you go to people's houses to troubleshoot them, and you see all this Apple stuff, and they'll bring in an Android or You just know it's something funky with the Apple because they want everything to be Apple. They want a homogeneous network, everything the same. So, anyways, I was telling you about something, and I don't remember what it was. I have to. That's always a good sign. It makes me move faster, right? No, but it just. But things work out for me, you know. So it's really important. I want to stress to you guys. You guys are going to be doing this today, and if you screw it up, right, it doesn't really matter. Am I going to care? I'm not going to care. I'm like, well, you screwed up. That's good. You learned, right? Learning through mistakes is okay. You just have to make sure the mistake is a safe mistake to make, right? Like driving your car that's a hard way to learn how to drive a car properly, right? You're going to make mistakes, but you don't want to kill yourself or somebody else to learn it. So the stakes are really low. Like, it doesn't matter. The worst case scenario is you're going to have to start over and you're going to cost me about 3 cents in cable, right? That's like the worst mistake you can make, right? Other than causing yourselves all sorts of pain and agony because you switch this around. So I'm just trying to head it off if I can. I'd like to head it off and help you to not make a mistake if I can. We can speed it up a little bit. And I got to show you just a couple tips about installing cable, right? So, do you know how to get the sheath off of here?
Yes, you use that one to...
So we got that little stripper tool, right? Do you notice I don't have that? I hate that thing. So if you don't have the gauge set perfectly right, it'll cut the wire. Right. So did you learn to hate it too? You should have. Because you don't want that, right? Like, you don't want to install a cable and have it break on you. That's not good. I wonder if you could grab my little Lenovo charger over there. I'm not going to make it. You see it? It's plugged in my desk. You have to fish it out. I know I have to go faster. So you can use that little. It's like a little cigar cutter, right? You seen that? You just got to make sure that the razor blade gauge is set properly for the cable you're working with. Now, if I was a cable installer, I'd take the time to set one up because it's faster if you set it properly. But if you're going to make 4 cables, by the time you set the gauge right, you could be done doing it the way I'm going to show you. The way I'm going to show you always works. So what I do is I just take my little scissors here and I just kind of nick the outside of it all the way around. Now, when I do this, I'm damaging the wire. There's a 100% chance I'm damaging the wire. I think you can figure it out. Look underneath. See that little tray there? Now it figured it out. It's a little power thing. It says Lenovo on it. It's a weird looking little charger, but you got to be able to figure this out, man. I got faith in you. Now, do you see that little filament? Did you guys see the filament there? There for 2 months, and not take the test. There's a lot to know about structured cabling too, and I'm not trying to tell you guys I'm a structured cabling expert, because I'm certainly not an expert in structured cabling. I don't pretend to be an expert in structured cabling. I just learned some stuff over the year. I was never really formally trained in any of the cabling stuff. I'm more of a network person by training. So there's that little filament that I was talking about. So what you gotta do is you gotta grab it and you gotta pull it down. Now you see how I'm fighting it and it's not really going? So, oh, absolutely, give it a little help. That's what I've learned to do, is chop it here a little bit. I don't really care if I'm damaging this cable because I'm not going to use this cable, right? I'm going to cut that off. Then you just pull it down now. That's about all you need to have. So the whole point of that is now I have brand new, untouched, undamaged cable right here. Because like you guys found, you use that little stripper, you probably nicked the cable, and it will break, right? Especially over time, if it's sitting in the rack and out on somebody's desk and gets moved a little bit, the metal will fatigue and break on you. Then I just give it the little cut there and just kind of finish it off. It doesn't need to look perfect. I don't like it to look like super gross and sloppy, but it doesn't need to look perfect. Now I gotta show you how to install it into here. I hope I can set this up and get the light to look good. I learned to take the exposure down a little better, and it looks a little better. How come it's not doing anything? There it goes. Went a little too far. So what one do you guys want me to, what number do you want me to install on?
That would be 7.
Well, these are one, this is 1 and this is 2.
Okay. 1.
Alright, so we're going to do 1.
Yeah.
1 is always the easiest one to do. You guys will not all be able to do 1. Now, I'm going to tell you a couple things. That I always like to give you the warning, like what not to do. People will do this. They'll start on the outside. Do you know why it's bad to start on the outside like this? Yeah, the cable is probably going to be coming in like this or like this. And there's all these little spots for cable ties. You want to use cable ties because this little, when you punch it down, you probably notice it's in there reasonably good, but it's not going to withstand a lot of pressure. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll loop a little cable tie right in there, just real loose, and just kind of feed them in as I install them. And you'll just kind of see from there. But for now, I can just start like this. And I'm going to do number 1. So you guys want me to do this one down here? You're going to mess me up. I have to do it backwards, which is okay. And I actually wouldn't use this one because this blue one I don't like. This is pushed open too much. So I'm not going to do number 1 because I don't think it'll work if I do number 1. Can you guys see that? I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can tell or not, but so I am going to go up and do number 2. And number 2 doesn't look very good either. Actually, this is all beat up. I don't like any of these. Well, I probably wouldn't use this particular punch down block. This one's probably ready to get thrown away because a lot of them are jacked up as I'm looking them over. These in the middle, they tend to be better because people like to, when they do the lab, they like to do the ones on the outside because they're easier to get to. So people will beat up the first 8 ports on either side, but the ones in the middle a lot of times are perfect. So like if you're not sure and you look your jack over, or you look your punch down block over, you want me to look at it for you, I'd be happy to look at it too. But you'll see the same things I see. Generally, the outsides are beat up. Once they all start getting looking rough, I just throw them away because they're just used up. So these ones in here look they look bad too, don't they? This guy's ready to get retired. Actually, this one, the only port I see on this punch down block that I would use is 16, way over here. The rest of them are not looking good. Alright, so here we go. We're on number 16. And notice what I'm not doing right now.
You're not even doing anything.
I didn't untwist any wires, right?
Oh, yeah.
So what I usually do is I'm going to do number 16 up here. I like to line it up. I like the sheath to be right in the middle of the punch down block. Right? I don't like it to be way down here like this, and I don't like it to be too tight because then I don't have enough play. I can't really grab a hold of it. So like right about in the middle is perfect. And if I'm doing 16, I got my choice. I can start over here with the brown, or I can start over here with the blue. It doesn't really matter. If I'm going to start with the blue, I'm just going to flip this cable backwards. Alright, who's playing a joke on me here?
Yeah, I was thinking that same thing. Where's the green one?
Did you see that? Someone's messing with me.
I was sitting there and I'm like, wait.
What did you put in me?
I was thinking it's the green one. Like,
Yeah, there's no green.
There was a green earlier. You must have ripped it.
Was there? I did rip it off.
that's why we can't really say.
I like how you painted red at me.
Because I get the feeling you'd do that to me. I'm too old, by the way, to play jokes on.
I do get it from my dad. He's like that.
That happens, right? You get to a certain age, people play jokes on you. You're like, ooh, my heart.
When my dad was younger, he turned on his lady's furnace all the way up and like ruined and like took all the way all over propane for the winter.
That was not very nice. I'm just going to catch me back up because I need the green wire, don't I? We know that. I got them all this time. Yippee. So what I'll do a lot of times when I get ready to do this, I'm going to do number 14, which is, actually I'm going to do number 16, which is this one. A lot of times I'll just kind of roughly get them in the right order so that I don't have to mess around with it when I'm in there. And we're going to need to do blue, right? We got to do our blue one, and then we're doing 568B, so orange is next. So it's blue, orange,
Oh, I get it now.
green, brown. Now both sets of wire, or both wiring schematics are on there, so if you accidentally start following the wrong one, you'll make a problem, right? Because that's really the only problem the biggest problem that people get into. So why didn't I untwist them?
They don't need them.
It makes a mess.
This one doesn't need to be untwisted.
What's that?
This one doesn't need to be untwisted.
Well, you're not supposed to untwist them, right? They're twisted on purpose. So you're gonna have to untwist them a little bit to get them in there. You don't really have a choice, but I'm not gonna go crazy and untwist all these wires. I'm just gonna go like this and kind of push it over the top without untwisting it. And I got to make sure I get my blue wire on the left. Most of these punch down blocks will start with a blue white or the white wire on the left. Now once I get that one in there like that, I need to punch it down because it's going to keep popping out on me and driving me crazy. A lot of times I'll just do one real quick, and then it will kind of stay. Then I can just kind of put the other ones in and go back and hit them. That's what I do. Now you can punch them down as you go, one at a time. You can wait and do them all at the end. That will be harder because it'll kind of want to back out. What's that?
It cuts the end of them off.
Yeah, because it's got the sharp.
I like that.
It's hard to see, but this one is very sharp.
Yeah, it looks like
Yep. So I probably shouldn't even tell you this, but some of you guys are sitting at desks with like holes in the desk. Why do you suppose there's holes in the desk?
people go like,
They punch the table down because they're stupid, right?
yeah.
Not only does it wreck my desk, it also is bad for the punch down. You'll see little dots on the table back there. So don't do that. Be happy. So the next one is my orange white, right? And I probably don't need to do a bunch of these because I know it gets kind of boring to sit here and watch me punch these down. I'll just finish just this one and show you. Then I would do the green ones next, right? And then I finish up with brown. So I would just finish those wires up, and then you got to take it down the middle and you got to zip tie it, right? But you zip tie them kind of all at once. Don't zip tie them your two and then your two and then your two and then your two. That just won't work. You got to zip tie like all 8 of them at once. But what you can do is you can put a zip tie in there just real loose, just to kind of give it a little bit of support. Then when you're done, just tighten it up. That's probably the best way to do it. Usually these racks are going to be mounted when you work on them.
Yeah, I saw that they're on the rack.
Yep. So don't mess with the ones that are already there. They're usually going to be mounted, and you got to work around it. Like you might have to lay on your belly and punch them down, right? You don't usually get to like unbolt them, take them to the table, and sit nice and comfortable like I was doing to do them. They're going to be racked. They're going to be mounted up high. Sometimes you'll be working off ladders. Sometimes you'll be working, on your belly if they're real low like this. Sometimes you can take them out and punch them down and then put them in. On these low ones, it actually works because all the cabling's exposed and it's a very short cable run. Do you guys understand what I'm telling you? If you're running a drop from here back to the where our cabling actually goes, well, actually ours goes to that little server room there, but if it went back a couple hundred feet, you're not going to have the luxury of pulling it out and pulling it in and moving it around. The wire is going to have to be where it is, and you're going to have to probably be uncomfortable when you install the wire in the punch down block. Does that make sense to you? It's just going to be probably installed in the rack, and you're going to have to get your body to wherever it is to install it.
You want us to do that?
You can do it either way. It doesn't matter to me. Because it's so open and we're only doing 2 cables, and it's really just an introductory class anyway. I don't expect you guys to be cabling experts by the time you get done. I don't mind if you take it out and install it where you can actually get a good look at it. It's harder, right, when your body's in an uncomfortable position to kind of see what you're doing. Once you get a little better at it, then you'll be able to be a little more, you'll be able to do it the way that you'll do it in industry better. So let me just take a couple seconds to tell you about this, and then we'll get you guys working on it. So probably the most important thing to understand on this is there's going to be a zip tie underneath here. You're going to have to zip tie them. And then when you install your cabling in it, let me just show you real quick what it should look like. I got videos and other demos I can share with you too if you're interested in watching them. And other people in the world have made YouTube videos on installing structured cabling. So if you want more information, there's a lot of information out there. This one should start right there like that. So don't have a bunch of loose wire hanging out the end of it. Did you guys install it? I saw some of the cabling you guys did, and I was like, ooh, that's not good. I don't know if you guys remember that. Some of you guys had so much wire out here. Now, as long as it's twisted together, you're not really going to have a problem with the crosstalk or anything like that. It's just exposed. Mostly it just looks bad, you know. So it should be up in like this. And then there's a little trick about how to get the wires in there properly. So if we're gonna do B, we start up here with our orange and white. Orange white is number 1, solid orange is number 2, right? And then green white is 3, and then 6 is the other green one. See, that's why they do the 1, 2, 3, and 6 to keep the pairs together on this one. They did the same thing on the punch down block. But remember when you made your RJ45, you actually split them apart. So that they're still going to be split apart. It's just actually a little bit easier, like they have them installed here. These also, interestingly enough, have a little directions, right, that nobody ever wants to look at. So you see right here where they're showing that cable going right like I showed you. So just to say I wasn't full of it on that. And then you see this little map here. Some people like this map. You guys like that little map? You can Google that map, right? So you don't need, this piece of paper is not magic. Like, you don't need to have this piece of paper to install it. But there's the map. We're going to do B. So we're going to start with orange, white, orange, green, white, and then see where it says blue at number 4. This is where people get mixed up. They'll read this. They'll read this, and they'll want to put the orange, white one next to the green, white one. You see why that's a problem? Is if you're reading this map, it makes sense that you would do orange, white, orange, green, white, blue. Because that's what this says, right? But that's not what you do, because the green is 6. So the 6 is right. I don't know if you can see I think you can see that 6 on there. So the only other thing that I talk about is shielded cabling, because they talk about shielding, right? So you can buy these boxes that have shields in them. Remember we talked about EMI, and if you have EMI problems, you can buy cable that has shielding around the outside of it. So shielding is like a little mylar, like that stuff they make balloons out of, right? So it's got a little metal in it somehow, and it will help with radio frequency interference if you buy shielded cable. But if you buy shielded cable but don't buy a shielded box, what happens when you take the cable off? You took the shield off, right? See, this is what this is talking about. So you would have to buy a shielded box too if you needed shielded cabling. Now nowadays in industry, do you need a lot of shielded cabling? Usually you're not doing shielded cabling because you don't have a lot of problems with it in an office environment. And if you're running it out on a factory floor where you will have problems with that, oftentimes people would run fiber optic cabling instead. Now the machine might be an old machine, might not have a fiber optic network interface on it, so you might have to run a copper cable to it, in which case you'd have to run shielded cabling, shielded patch cables, shielded everything. Does that make sense to you? So people will see this and they'll ask questions about it. So I was telling you, half shield, probably just the bottom of it. It's got a shield and it's regular. I don't know why you would buy a half shield, honestly. If you needed shielding, you'd think you'd just go with the whole thing, wouldn't you? It must be somebody buys it because they sell it. But if I needed shielding, I probably wouldn't buy a half shield. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me intuitively. So it just doesn't make sense. If you know you have a problem with RFI, that full shielded box probably costs another 50 cents. It just wouldn't make sense to me. That I don't care about 50 cents. I would like the whole thing to be protected from the RFI if I have it. So, do you guys feel good about installing the cabling?
Yes.
Do you need to label it?
Yes.
Do you know how to use the labeler maker?
Yes.
So, should the label on this number here match up with the label on the drop?
Yes.
Sometimes I tell people that, and sometimes I don't. And if I don't tell them, people will screw this up. They're like, "Oh, I'm at dust number 1, so I'm going to put number 1 here." But then they run the cable to number 6. I don't know why people do that. I just know people do it. So you guys don't do it, right? If it's number 1 on this, it needs to go to number 1 on this, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And if number 1 on this is jacked up, broken, wrecked, or whatever, if you got to move it, then you got to relabel this. Really, really difficult to label or to troubleshoot something that's labeled incorrectly. Like if you're trying to troubleshoot your cabling and this says number 1, but it's really going to number 6, it's almost impossible to troubleshoot it, by the way. Once you figure out that people, after you get done swearing at the person that mislabeled it, you got to go through and test every single cable and label every single cable right before you can troubleshoot it. So you spend half your day relabeling the wire, right? People don't really want to pay someone that's a network engineer like $75 an hour to cable, like label stuff. They'd rather pay someone like you guys 10 or 12 bucks an hour to label it because it's easy, right? And you're cheaper. But if I go out to fix something and the cabling is mislabeled, I'm not going to charge them 10 bucks an hour because it's easy. I'm still going to charge them 50 bucks an hour or 75 bucks an hour because that's what I get. And I work cheap, by the way, when I do it. I guess the companies I go work for, that's what I usually charge them. The people, if they can't get me, they charge $125 to $150 an hour to get a network person over to help them. So that's why that's what people really, the salaries are real that you hear about when people have some experience with this. You can make $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year pretty quickly in the industry if you have some talent, you know. If you can get your A+ certification, get some skill out there, learn how to do a little bit of cabling, learn how to do some troubleshooting. I mean, the money's out there to be made, and people need it. So I actually turned down more work because I don't really want to go work more, right? I mean, you feel the same way. You start getting older, you get a family and stuff. I don't want to go back out at 7 o'clock at night and work for 2 hours. I would just as soon not do that, you know. So there's a lot of companies out there that have shortage for employees and whatnot too. So the skills that we teach you here are useful, you know. And if you do a good job, make it look neat, label it, test it. You guys know how to test it, right? You guys did cable testing in Mr. Riley's class. So let's skip some of that stuff. So I think you guys know how to do it. What are the problems I have in my class of people testing cables? Like, there's the number one problem that I encounter. Well, the cable doesn't work, or they think it doesn't work, so they have to test it. But what problem do we encounter with people testing cables? I have seen that. It's probably not the number one problem, though. I wonder if Mrs. Fernandez knows.
What?
When people are cable testing cables in my lab, when they're testing their cable run, what's the number one problem I see when people are doing that?
I don't know.
You'll know it after I tell you.
Yeah,
Like,
I probably will.
What you guys will do is you will test your patch cable, or you will test your cable run with patch cables that you didn't test. So you have a bad patch cable, and so the patch cable is bad, right? Does that help you with a bad patch cable when you're testing your cable run? You have to start by testing your patch cables, right? And if you buy like a real professional toolkit, you're going to get like some really fancy shielded patch cables that come with the kit, you know, and you always use those. Don't just grab some random patch cable and use that to test your cables, because you got to have good equipment to test, right?
Right.
So my recommendation is test your patch cables first, and when you call me over to help you, the thing I'm going to say is, did you test your patch cables? You will say yes, and I'm going to say test them again, because I didn't see it tested, right? And I've done that. I spent my time wasted troubleshooting this stuff with bad patch cables, and I don't like to do that. So, you guys ready? All right, who does our break? That was like the best one yet. Some of you guys didn't do it, though. That makes me mad.
Do you have any little batteries, the little round batteries?
Like watch batteries?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have any of those necessarily in stock.
Okay.
So you need some of those?
Yeah, I need a Sierra 2025.
Yeah, those things. Yeah, is that for the M-Bot or whatever?
M-Bot, yeah.
Yeah, I probably have one at home because I bought one for Eli. But Meyer has them if you want to go over there.
I'll run over to Meyer. Maybe if I get ambitious, I'll run to Meyer.
Let me look, because I might have one. I don't think I do. I don't know why I'd have one, but in the back of my brain, I think maybe I bought a